Welcome to your video guide for travel healthcare. My name is Kay from TravelNursingNewbies.com, and today we will be discussing surviving orientation. So come on and join us now. Travel healthcare just got easier. You know, so far we've got a great company, we've got a great contract, our vehicle is ready, we've made it to our assignment. Next, we're going to go through orientation. Orientation at hospitals are very different. I've done everything from 4 hours of orientation to 4 to 5 days of orientation. So we're going to go over this orientation process. You know, a list of questions that you need to ask your recruiter is, how do you get paid? When does your timesheet have to be turned in? Usually it's Monday at noon, but some people will want you to have it turned in by 10 o'clock. Some people might want you to turn it in, give you until 5 o'clock. Make sure you know what time zone your assignment's in, what time zone your company is in. When I worked in Washington, my company was in Charlotte, North Carolina. I had to realize that there's a 3-hour difference, so I had to get my time card in by 9 o'clock a.m., which was 12 o'clock a.m. or noon, their time. You know, when you get to the hospital, ask them, how do you clock in and clock out? Do you just go to the staffing office and write it in the book, or do you actually have to punch in and out with their clocking system? Are there any additional classes or certifications that you will need to complete before orientation? Nowadays you have a gazillion modules to do. With some hospitals, you know, be aware that those are out there, that you may have to do those before your orientation. Another thing that you need to know for orientation, and this is better if you ask it in your interview, is what is the dress code for orientation? Does the hospital have specific scrubs? Or what do you need to wear for orientation? Personally, I wear business casual to orientation, but I always take a set of scrubs with me in case that they want me to work the floor that day. Another thing you might ask is, where do you park for orientation? And are there any parking fees? Personally, I've never been to a hospital big enough that I've had parking fees, but I know in the bigger cities, New York and Hawaii and, you know, even Atlanta, and California, you have outrageous parking fees. Make sure you know where to park for orientation, and then in orientation you want to make sure that you know where to park while you're on assignment. You know, just ask your recruiters or anything else that I need to know. Touch base with the facility. You know, one thing that's really hard to understand whenever you first get into travel healthcare is that, when do I get my orientation? You know, I've had, I don't know how many newbies come up to me and, oh my God, okay, I'm supposed to start Monday. I have no idea about orientation. Well, surprisingly, there's a lot of times that you won't find out your orientation schedule until Friday, before you're supposed to be there Monday. Okay, that is not uncommon, unfortunately. Hopefully you won't be like one of my assignments and you get your instructions on Monday morning at 8:30 saying that you need to be there by 7:30. That I didn't bring my time machine with me, and so yeah, I was a little tardy to that one. Make a trial run. When you get to your assignment location, make a trial run so that you know how long it takes you to get from your housing to your hospital. Once you get to the hospital in orientation, be prepared to do more paperwork, more testing. You might have to do a medication exam, or another one is an EKG exam. They may have you do a BCAT or a PBDS. Talk to your recruiter, see if you can make every attempt to get informed about any test that you will need to do during orientation. Another thing is, be prepared to stay all day. Take lunch money. Don't forget your lunch money, or take your lunch, because usually orientation will start in the morning, 8 or 9 o'clock, and you will be staying till 4 or 5 o'clock. Be prepared to give them a copy of your credentials. I know you sent everything to your recruiter. You sent 2 copies to your recruiter, and you get to the hospital, there's a chance they're going to ask you again for a copy of your credentials. I know this is a big pain, but it's just a fact of travel healthcare. This is what we have to go through to do the privilege of the adventure of travel healthcare. Orientation may seem really mundane, but it's very important that you listen to what the instructions they're telling you. During this time also, you will probably go to get an ID badge and maybe even a parking permit. During orientation, you will most likely go through hospital policies and procedures. If there's certain policies and procedures that affect your unit, make sure that you write those down. It's very important for you to know where the policy and procedure manual is located on your unit. So that's another thing that you need to make sure that you find in orientation. Whenever you first get to orientation, lots of times they'll have a classroom time, and then make sure that you get a tour of the unit and that you meet the manager on that unit on orientation day. I don't know, I've been to 2 or 3 hospitals that they didn't do that. And I felt lost on my first day. I didn't know really where I was going. So prevent that, and make sure that during orientation that you speak up and ask where your unit is and who your manager is. Orientation now usually consists of 1 day of hospital orientation, 1 day of nursing orientation, and at least 1 day of computer orientation. That may be your first 3 days. Then hopefully you'll get some time on the floor. If your floor orientation, I prefer to have 1 day of on the floor and let me follow you. The second day, you and I are a team. The third day, let me do it and you follow behind me or be somewhere to where I have you as a resource. This process allows me to get on my feet quickly at a facility and be able to operate by myself. Don't be afraid to ask questions if you can't find the answer yourself. A lot of times when we go into these new hospitals, the policies and the procedures may be different. What I personally do is I do what I have been taught, unless they have instructed otherwise. Now, if they have instructed otherwise, please do in Rome what the Romans do. You always want to go by their policies and procedures, but don't forget what you have learned and your critical thinking skills and your skills that you have based your last 2 or 3 years of nursing on. One of the most important things now in nursing is the computer system. Unfortunately, there are several different types that are not as user-friendly as others, but some of the most common ones are Epic, Cerner, Meditech, Paragon, and Allscripts. Epic and Cerner are 2 of the most commonly used ones, and they are fairly user-friendly. Meditech and Paragon, not so much. They aren't impossible, but it just may take you a little bit longer to learn those. Be sure to ask questions whenever you're doing your documentation, because you want to make sure that you are documenting the exact way that that facility wants you to document. Your first couple of days on the floor can be a little scary, but please remember that you do have a clinical liaison at your travel company that can help you if it's something that you need help right then and there. See if you have a 24-hour one that's on call. If it can wait till the next day for business hours, I would try to call them. I work night shift. I would try to call the clinical liaison, first thing in the morning whenever I got home, and to ask a question. Just remember that resource is already there. Once you're on the floor, you need to make sure that you know where the policy and procedure manuals are, whether they're actually printed out and in a bookcase, or where to find them online? Most of them now are online. Make sure that you know where the clean utility room is, the dirty utility room, the medications room, and any other special rooms like a triage or women exam room or a treatment room. Write all your codes down for these rooms. There's some hospitals that are really nice to you and they have the same code for all rooms, but there are also hospitals that have a different code for every different room on every different floor. If you're going to float, that's one of the first things you need to do as a float nurse is to find out the codes for that floor. Other things you need to make sure that you get in orientation is make sure that you have your computer code you should have in the other orientation process whenever you did your computer training. But make sure also that you have your Pyxis or AcuDose access. Make sure you have access to the medication room and to your medications. Make sure that you have access to the glucometer. Very important for patient care that you have access to everything that you need to take care of your patients properly. It's your responsibility to make sure that you get all of these codes during your orientation. You know, the thing about it is you need to go to orientation, you need to learn a lot and ask questions. Orientation is a time to ask questions. So be prepared and we'll see you out there on the road. Bye guys.